Hey, I'm Pete Deluski, and we're here with the next edition of Inside BMX. And today we are graced with the presence of an Olympic champion, Connor Fields. Connor, incredible racing in the beginning of the season, but let's get up, what's going on, everything in the world right now. How are you, first of all, and how are you dealing with all the things going on right now where you live in Las Vegas?
Yeah, it's a crazy time, right? I think there's never been anything like this, at least in our lifetimes. So I think the hardest thing for a lot of people is like we've got no experience to draw from of, oh, this is what happened last time. This is what we can expect to happen this time. So it's just a whole lot of unknowns. Like nobody knows when we're going to race again, but nobody knows when we'll be able to just go out to dinner again, right? Like there's, so many layers to this whole thing. So just dealing with it as best as I can and trying to stay, as relaxed and just take it one day at a time, but it's hard. Like there's definitely days where I get bummed out or, days where I get a little more stressed than others. I think it's just normal with everything going on right now.
Um, you know, we talked briefly before, and as you mentioned, there's a lot worse things going on in the world, and with situation with people's economic backgrounds and things that they're facing in the future. But as a professional athlete, I mean, that's your job. And right now, luckily, I believe you have some good sponsors, so you have some income coming in, so you don't have to worry about that. But the aspect of being able to train in an outside setting, you use BMX track as a big part of your training, I would believe, as well as certain things in the gym. I did see that you built a home gym, and you've been pretty good about keeping fans updated on Instagram and social media. But how is that affecting the way that you're able to just continue, with your livelihood?
Yeah, it's definitely going to be changed and it's going to be limited, right? Like this will probably be the longest I go without doing a gate start, for a long time. I think I have the one advantage is just knowing, I'm 27 years old. I've been doing this for 20 years. So if I have to take 3, 4, 5, 6 months off of riding a BMX track, however long it is, it's not like I'm going to completely forget what I'm doing and I'll be able to get it back relatively quickly. And the thing also that's making me stay relaxed about that is we're not going to just be told, hey, boom, you're racing next week. We're going to have an idea of when the racing is going to be back on, and local tracks are going to open up, I think, long before our World Cup goes. So we're going to have time to kind of get back into the swing of things before we ramp up and race. But yeah, it's been crazy. I mean, as an athlete, in an Olympic sport, the Olympics is the holy grail. That's what we go for every 4 years. You kind of build everything around being at your best every 4 years for that major event. And so I'd done that leading into 2020. I spent extra time away, training, getting ready, was feeling good. Everything was tracking exactly how I wanted it to. And then, now we're in this situation. But at the same time, it's the same for everybody. But for me, I'm looking at this as an opportunity to address some weaknesses in areas that I don't normally have time to address. Like I've never had 3, 4, 5 months to just get as strong as I possibly can because we're always racing and riding and doing things like that. So trying to find the advantages and try to look at it from a positive perspective and figure out what can I do here that I'll be thankful for 6 months from now when we're back racing again.
And as we said before,
let me plug my computer in. Hang on one sec.
See, downtime, you forget to plug your computer in. You're slipping, dude. This is media, international media, and your computer's dying already.
International media. Let's go. At the beach. Where are you coming from? You're calling from Turks and Caicos.
Actually, that you mentioned it, I forgot to let the fans know. We're here in Los Angeles, beautiful beachside behind me. Doom and gloom's in the air, in the news, on the TV in front of you. You see these people outside with masks. We're all dealing with this situation. I figured maybe give a little bit of a smile to someone somewhere with my virtual beach background, and at least got a smile out of you. So, as we said, there's a lot of people, worse situations, and we take that all into consideration. But for you as an athlete, between the training and being gone, but when you're home, how much time do you spend at home? So how different do things feel right now? A lot of people are not used to being home all the time. I think for you, you probably spend a lot of time at home other than when you're at the gym training or whatever you do. But so it's not the worst scenario, but how different is it to be working out in your garage and, maybe only really doing sprints right in front of your house, or what you're even be able to do?
It's definitely weird, but I've come to enjoy it. And I think I'll end up spending a bit more time at home, for forevermore after this. Like just cooking more and, just enjoying time with my fiance and just relaxing. Like, it's definitely a slow pace of life right now, being home a lot. And I've gotten a lot of things done that I'd normally put off, like organizing closets and getting rid of old clothes I don't wear anymore. And, the last couple of weeks I've done a bunch of stuff around the house to where I kind of ran out of things to do around the house. So that part of it was good, but I'm enjoying being home. Just because it's different. But I think once we're able to start traveling again and getting back to the races, I think we'll be enjoying that part of it. But yeah, just trying to again look at the positives. If I get to do something now that I don't normally get to do, and that's spend extra time at home and just kind of relax a little bit.
All right. And speaking of being back on the road, let's go back a little bit to the end of last season. The start of this season went really well for you. You had a lot of good races. You won the USA BMX #1 pro title, and you kicked off the year with some really good results at the World Cups that we were able to get in. So from your perspective, just talk us through the last few months of last year. Actually, we could talk about, that the leading up to winning your second title and then the races that you had participated in so far this year.
Yeah, no, selfishly, this break came at the worst time for me because I was on a hot streak. I think, up until the final day in Houston, I had like 15, 16 straight USA BMX podiums and like 10, 11 wins or something. Won the national title, World Cup wins. Like, I was tracking really nicely and things were going really well. But, I got there once. I can get there. I'm not just once. I've gotten there before. I can get there again. It's something that what to do it again. But yeah, I mean, everything went really well the back end of last year. I had been dealing with just some injury stuff, and I had kind of a down 2018 and started 2019. I missed with injury, and took a lot of mental strength kind of to get back to that level of confidence and physically everything, that you were before the injury. But ended the year really strong in 19 on the World Cup stuff and on the domestic stuff, and I brought some good confidence into the start of 2020, and yeah, things went well in Australia. It was cool racing on those tracks just because we've been racing on the same circuit kind of for quite a while. So it was cool to do something new, break it up a little bit, and I enjoyed it down there. And hopefully we can get back down there again. I thought Shepard had put on a great show. It sucked, everything with the weather and everything that happened in Bathurst, but it'd be great to race down there again. It was a lot of fun.
And speaking of Australia, you spent quite some time there in the beginning of the year doing some training, preparing. A lot of people, you get to travel a lot, but you don't get to spend a lot of time in certain places that you travel to. So comparing the scene that you had in Australia, it seems really fun, really upbeat. You have a lot of good characters, a lot of people with good personalities in Australia. But from your perspective, how different was it? We like to compare things, but from the U.S. side to Australia, how could you compare BMX racing between the two different places that you got to spend some time?
Yeah, and that's a really good question. And I think that's something that doesn't get talked about enough in the sport. Everybody's so kind of wrapped into their own country and what's going on there, and they don't look around. And I think just like with most things in life, there's really good things about everywhere, and then there's also things that could be improved everywhere, right? There's not one circuit or one series or one place around the world that has everything figured out and they're the best one. There's great things about everywhere you go. And I've tried to, throughout my career, race around the world in other countries, whether it's I've done rounds in South America before when I was a junior, I've raced European rounds, I've raced Canadian rounds, just trying to race all over and enjoy different perspectives and different flavors of racing. The one thing I'd say about Australia that's really cool is they care a lot about their racing, whether it comes from the people that run their association, BMXA, or just going to any local track they call them clubs. Everyone cares, and they put a lot of effort in. And for me, it's kind of become a bit like a second home. My coach is from Australia, so we've kind of split time. He's come here before, or maybe Chula Vista, and I spent a lot of time in Australia. And I've always kind of approached BMX from a working mentality, in that, like, not that I don't enjoy it, but it's my job. And I look at going to training camp as I'm going to work for a month, whether some people have to go travel to build something, whether if they're in construction, or, maybe if they're doing a takeover, if they're in the corporate world, they have to travel somewhere and live there for a period of time to do the takeover. For me, I just look at going down and spending 4 or 6 weeks in training camp as part of the job to prepare myself to be better for later on in the year. And so we just had a plan all along, like the racing starting in Australia. It's summertime down there. It's, it's a good scene. It's a good way for me to kind of get um, out of my comfort zone, force myself to be in an environment where the only thing that really matters is my training and getting prepared for the upcoming. I don't have not that there are distractions, but the distraction of my fiance or my dog or my friends or life or things going on. It's like you wake up in the morning and you've got one thing to worry about, and that's how fast am I going to sprint today? Or that's how is my starts going to be today? And I can do that for a period of time. I can't do it for too long because I'll just go crazy. I need that life, that balance. But for me, I found that that's what works best is like a short burst of really intense training at the key times to lead into, the most important events. And I probably have to do it again, but that's part of what we're dealing with right now.
Touch quickly on some training aspects. We see a lot of people don't really have any idea what training is. Just getting in the sport. Some people that have been in the sport quite some time think one aspect of training is, but explain how you found what works best for you, because it seems to be, as one of the top riders in the world. Seems whatever you're doing seems to be working. So just talk about, you don't have to talk about what you actually do, but talk about how you found what works best for you and how you were able to continue to do it, because I'm sure it's not easy.
Yeah, well, I think there's a couple of things to look at there. I think the first thing is to understand that everybody's different, right? You look at me and my body type, and then if you just look at my teammate, you're around me and Joris, like we've got very different body types. He's skinny and he's lean and he's long. I'm a little bit more thick and compact. Like we just look like two different body types, right? So what works for me and what works for him, they might be completely different. We might have two very, very different training approaches, training programs, but we show up on the race day and we're battling this far apart from each other all the time, right? So I think the most important thing is trial and error, and there's no way to do it without trying different things to find out what works for you. And sometimes you have to try things and they might not work, and I think at the older age of 27 like Joris, or like myself, or 28 like Joris, or 30 like someone like David Graff, we've had those experiences. We've tried it, we've messed things up, we've done things right, and we understand what works for us. And that's what's kind of allowed us to build up that long consistency where we can be good week in, week out, year in, year out. Whereas it's harder for some of the younger athletes because they're still going through that process of figuring out what works for them and what doesn't. Circle back, I think it's just understanding that you're going to have to go through that experimenting phase to figure out what works and what doesn't. And then I think the other thing is you have to constantly be figuring out how to continue to get better, right? You can't just say, oh, I won this race. Okay, I'm good. I'm not going to do anything different. This is the exact thing I'm going to do forever. It's like I've won races 10 years ago doing training that looks completely different than the training that I'm doing now. And in the last 10 years, there's been all sorts of different things that have been adopted based on whether it's something that we learn works or we learn doesn't work, or, maybe my trainer, Sean, read something a study that said, doing this, it helps with this. And we implemented it, whatever it is, but it's constantly changing. It's constantly evolving. And I think that's pretty important. And then just to go one more step further, for the beginners and for the younger riders who are just getting into it, maybe not at the World Cup level, the biggest mistake that I see made is that they lose track of the number one most important thing. And the number one most important thing is bike time. It doesn't matter whether you're riding the track or just riding around, going to the dirt jumps, going to the skate park, whatever it is. The more time you spend on your bike, the better racer that you will be. Yes, gym is important in sprints and all that stuff. But I don't care how much you can squat. Go into a gym, find a dude who can squat 400 pounds, tell him to ride the track. You know what I mean? It's not the same thing. You have to ride the track well first and have a good base of bike skills first, and then you add in the other ingredients after, and not the other way around.
So yeah, that's good to see how you say the evolution. Speaking of evolution, you won your first World Cup in 2011. So that's quite a streak there of wins. I'm gonna have to go back and check to see who has that longest streak from first win to the last win, but I think you're going to be one of those guys that's up there. 2011 was your first win in Chula Vista. You got to ride there a lot, but talk us through the experience of that first win, what it was like to race in the U.S. for first of all. You had a couple of really good results before that, I think a second and a third, and then, walking away from a win at what may have been, in your eyes, one of those big, eye-opening events. to the beginning of your career?
Yeah. Coming into that event, I had, like you said, I gotten some seconds and some thirds, but I had gotten most of those results on my track speed. I was never blowing people away down the first straightaway. I was, coming into the first turn fifth, sixth, and making moves, passing people, and kind of getting a way to get through. And I understood and I knew that if I wanted to win, you can still pass people, but you're not going to go from sixth to first, right? Sixth to third, maybe. Sixth to first, I'm not thinking. So you might get second to first or third to first, but you need a first straight. So at the end of 2010, I hired Sean Dwight, my coach, and basically the whole thing was like, hey, let's build an engine. Let's get to the point where I can whole shot a race instead of just coming from the back. So that was a big part of it, was getting to the point where I had that. But for me, there was a lot going on in that. I coming into the end of 2011, I made the world's main event in Copenhagen, but I hadn't made a World Cup main in 2011. I missed the first one in South Africa and the second one in Papendal, out with injury. So I came back. Then the first one was the London test event. I got fifth in the semi. And so this is like getting down to crunch time where for Team USA for selection. And at this time, Corbin had won a World Cup in 2011 in South Africa. David and Nick were both in the test event, main event, the week before in London. So I was at this time, I was the fourth guy kind of on the radar. I hadn't really done anything to say, hey, I need to be on this Olympic team. So there's a bit of pressure kind of mounting, and that was the last World Cup of the year, leading into the following year. And that's a long 6 months if you have to sit for 6 months in the off season thinking, I had a really bad year. I'm on the outside looking in. Things aren't looking so good. So I put everything into trying to get a good result at that final event in Chula Vista. I lived 5 hours from Chula Vista, but I drove there and back like 3 or 4 times in the weeks leading up to it. Every time I rode there, even if I had to drive 5 hours for practice. Like I just put all my cards on the table to try to do my best there. And I would say the most important race on that day wasn't even the main event. It was actually the semi, because there was a moment in the semi that I was in 6th place in the first turn. And I was behind David Herman, Mara Strombergs, Mike Day, Sylvan Andre, Edsis Tremonis. Like there was a litany of like really strong guys right in front of me. And I was able to make a lot of passes in that semi and get to 2nd place, but then I kept going. I was able to pass David, and I won the semi, which put me in lane 1 in the main event. And I don't know if I would have been able to whole shot or get out of the first turn first if I wasn't on the inside. So the semi, I'd actually say, was the more important lap than the main even on that day. But come main event time, I was in 2nd or 3rd down the first straight. Nick kind of had the lead, but didn't cut me off all the way into the first turn. And I was able to get under him, and I took the whole shot. And there was a huge blow up behind me. Everybody crashed, but I had no idea that everybody crashed. I thought they were right behind me. And this was the first time that I led a race since I had been leading in the junior world titles when I crashed, right? So up to this point, the biggest race of my life, I got in front, and I messed up, and I crashed. So I was terrified that the next time that I got out in front again, would I be able to hold it, or was I going to crash again? So I got out in front, and it was the longest 25 seconds of my life from the first turn to the finish line. It would have been a little easier if knowing everybody crashed behind me, and I was literally doing a lap by myself. But if you watch me, like, going through the 3rd straight, I'm so stiff because I just didn't want to make a mistake, and I was so, like, trying to stay so calm. And I crossed the finish line, and it was a really cool feeling. Like, there's not much that compares with winning your first one. I told Isaac Kennedy when he got his first podium in Rock Hill last year, I was like, hey, man, make sure you enjoy this, because the first one is without a doubt the best one, because now once you've done it once, you're almost, not that you expect it every time, but it's a disappointment if you don't. And it's that first time of feeling it, and so it was just, it's something that you don't really get to experience often. Your first win, your first championship, your first whatever, and it was a really special feeling. And then it kind of propelled me from there. I was able to kind of put myself in a good position to make the Olympic team. I had 6 months in the off season where I was feeling more confident. I was able to come back and win the next Chula Vista and then the next World Cup in Norway. So like that one semifinal and that one main event kind of launched, I would say, like the next step of my career where I was able to win races instead of just be a contender.
As you rattled off a few names there, brings back a lot of great riders in the sport. And like I said, you raced your first World Cup, I believe you were 16.
Yeah, '09.
Yeah. And so you get to see the progression. You get to see some riders on their way out, and you've seen other riders, coming up. Give me a list of 5 riders, and this is going to be a tough one, over that whole period of time that stand out to you as some of the best competitors, not necessarily the best racer, but the best competitors that you had to go head to head or, in an 8-man race with.
Yeah. No, and I love this. I love talking about this stuff. It's tough for me because I didn't get to race Bubba and Kyle Bennett and Donnie and Mike in the primes, right? I got to race them towards the end of their careers. So I have no idea what it was like to race Kyle Bennett in 2002 when he won 20-something races in a row. I have no idea what it was like to be, again, whole shot in a race with Bubba Harris in '06 behind you, hearing Mike Rebbing yelling, "Here comes Bubba!" I don't know what that's like. So I can only really compare it to the guys that I kind of was able to compete with. I think you got to start with Maris, the 2-time Olympic champion. I would say that with Maris, on the days where he showed up mentally and physically ready to go, you were almost racing for second. The thing with Maris was you never knew what you were going to get. Like one weekend he would kill everybody and it wouldn't even be a contest, and then the next weekend he would be out in the quarters. And for him, it was like if he showed up and he was going, it was done. Like that, it wasn't even you were losing, and he was one of those guys where it's like you could have your best start, your best first straight, and he'd still put a bike length on you to the first turn, and you're like, well, Maris is just going to Maris, and you just kind of would have to take that one on the chin. And then Sam, I think racing Sam, the biggest strength that Sam had was that he just never gave up, never quit. Like he was just a fighter, and you knew no matter what when you were racing him, he was going to fight every single time. Good days, bad days. If things were going well, he'd have his days where he'd win every lap all day. Then he'd have his days where he was making mistakes, things weren't going well, but you knew that come main event time, if you're in the lead and he's in second, he's going to do everything he can to pass you. And so, racing him was really tough just because he always brought 100% every single time. So Maris and Sam, I think Joris is another one you got to throw in there. I think he's been one of the most consistent guys over the period of 10 years. Year in, year out, he's either winning or he's right there all the time. And I think his biggest strength is that he doesn't really make mistakes too often. If you are going to beat him, it's not going to be because he hit the gate or because he messes up a jump. If you're going to beat him, you have to be straight up faster than him because he's going to be smooth. He's not going to make those mistakes. And I think that's one of his biggest strengths as a racer is just he's so consistent with his laps and with his jumps and his turns and his starts. And then Neek, I think Neek's he was younger, right? I think I was at the race where he won his first race. I raced him when he was a junior. He's another one. Like, how many guys can just jump in lane 8 and be like, yeah, I'm just going to whole shot everybody from lane 8, no worries. Like, he's a bit like Maris in that, like, when he goes, he's going, and you could have your best lap, and it's just like, yep, Neek's just going to Neek. Like, you go to Poppendall, and it's almost like we're racing for second sometimes because he's just a step ahead of everybody else. And then I would say an underrated guy that I got towards the end of his career when I was racing, and no one talks about him because he's quiet, but that was David Herman. I raced him a lot just being American, but he was so strong down the starting hill, but so quiet, right? But he put together some of the biggest hole shots you'd ever see, and it would just come from nowhere. He'd be out in lane 5 and just destroy you to the first turn, and it was like, where did that come from? But I often feel like he gets a little bit forgotten about in modern day because he's quiet. He's not on social media running his mouth, but multiple World Cup winner and all that. But he's someone I always knew when he was in the race, because I always knew that he could potentially be one of those guys that was going to be fighting for the win, fighting for the lead, and he was in a lot of those main events in Chula Vista or in the test event in London, or he did win a couple back before I was racing, and he was always someone you had to know that he was in the gate.
All right. Well, Connor, I appreciate the time. I know the fans are going to be happy to hear some, fun, positive, upbeat things, and to get a little bit more insight about you because, like I said, to see a lot of guys just see you on the track. out there, and it's good to see a different side of you. So appreciate the time today, and thanks for tuning in here on BMX Live TV for Inside BMX. Any last words, Connor?
Stay safe, everyone, and hope to see you guys at the races soon.
All right. Well, thanks so much.